Hello, I'm happy you're here. I tend to play characters on this channel and know it can be a bit pretentious. But this next part is all me. Fantasy is important, not because dragons are real, but because it shows us they can be beaten. In my setting, dragons are real as people and magic, and real as the book I will be reading from today. A book that shows people exactly how dragons can be beaten. The Fundamental Draconomicon of Skolvander Grey. Chapter 1. Death of the Author. The following are the studies of myself, Skolvander Grey, and have been funded by the patroness Valeria Pristine of the Basalt Shore Shipping Company, in cooperation with the Firstborn School of Faith, the Open Archives, and by extension the Empyrean Judge Vordant himself. It is the purpose of this guide to educate prospective hunters on all threats which dragons may pose, discussing without conjecture or opinion their abilities and the strategies on how best to kill each subspecies. I, a native of Thorns, now reside east of the Imish capital Prevail. Fluent in Draconic and Aesir, I have done extensive research into the texts and historical landmarks of these two races, as well as the war on Highest Perch, writing several books about these subjects and their cultures. As a magi, I possess considerable insight into psionic philosophy, but have kept such thoughts well compartmentalized. Demonstrably opposed to Fire's whim, history will find me untainted by her will. Best known for my tenure within the 1st and 7th houses, I served as a professor in the gilded courts of my home, at the Stone Library, and as a visiting archaeologist for the 7th Sun School of Sorcery. I have devoted my very life to the study of dragons and their history, advocating that they still threaten our societies in ways we choose not to see. Placed in charge of draconian affairs of our living King of Thorns, many will know my works: The Fall from Highest Perch, A Wingless Ascent, and most infamously my dissertation on Hidden Catacombs. My contemporaries will recognize me most for this last work, but for posterity I note that its detractors have used it to sully my reputation. My findings: that dragons are rebuilding not only their strength but their civilization, has been labeled conspiracy, and led to my exile from Thorns. To those who put this book down on account of those writings, do so at your peril. To those who call me insane, you may laugh. To those who removed me from my position, I have found promotion. To those who forced me from my home, you may take it. And to those who besmirched my name, read it, for it is printed here boldly. I, who have spoken with dragons, raided their homes and studied their corpses, declare my victory in this, the most fundamental Draconomicon ever published. Chapter 2. General Anatomy. Dragons are creations of intelligent design, every detail lovingly poured from the sun's heavenly veins. Theirs is her blood, and her will which permeates them. This permits them their impossible strength and unsurpassed psionic potential. As the pinnacle of arcane physiology, each is a walking inflection point to the sun. And so great is their power that for 1,000 years they matched the crafts and immortality of the Aesir with nothing but body and soul. Discontent with raw potence, their form was made to be malleable in measure with awe. Fashioned entirely from celestial blood, their flesh is fluid and held together by scale-like scabs. Unlike men, with our 4 humors held in delicate balance, dragons possess 12, each of such vitality that they may thrive off any mixture in any amount. Recognized by their hue and the vital essence they reflect, these humors are the biles, black and yellow, gray and brown, the phlegms, white and green, purple and orange, and the bloods, metallic, pink, blue, and red. Every dragon possesses a unique concoction of these 12 humors, but one invariably conquers the rest. The colors in their blood, responsible for the drastic dimorphism expressed across their anatomy, psychology, and magical capabilities. This dominant humor contorts the facets of biology, overwhelming their development through the production of hormones and morphogens, creating deliberate diversity and delineating the 12 races purpose-made. The first 12 dragons contained each but one humor, and thus emerged flawlessly, perfect and pure. Erupting directly from the sun's open wounds, dragon's blood wishes to be dragon's flesh, simply falling into place. When spilt, it will try and heal any harm, but failing this will form new life. If separated from the body and left alone, the blood will harden into a kobold, a servant to the dragon dependent on its master for life. But as Ichors conjoin, essence is offered willing or no, and should the vital fluid of 2 or more dragons fuse, then it will harden and grow into a new dragon. Similar to the divine conception of the pure dragons, all wormlings' scents are cut from something greater. Conceived without gender, dragons are born from blood, encased in blood, grown in blood. And once the vitae of multiple dragons is mixed, the pools clot into hardened spheres. As the serum dries, platelets form, whilst the plasma remains fluid within, facilitating gestation. Often called eggs by the layman, despite their similarities in function and appearance, they are truly alien to the eggs of beasts, and thus require a name. Practitioners of the study refer to these as a curor, and most differently, a curor does not break, for a dragon does not hatch. Instead, the walls of the sphere shift and divide until undefined mass transfigures into arms and wings, into a living, moving wormling. But a dragon's apotheosis lies not in its emergence, but its genesis, at its first cell, the Draconis Fundamentem. For from and around this, all things are assembled, and by its plan, the order of organs is determined. Aptly named, the Draconis Fundamentum is fundamental to their kind. Acting on the wishes of blood, it guides the differences between races and sustains the appetites that their might requires. Tearing at reality, the Fundamentum forms a stable inflection point between dragon and sun, opening an aperture across which plasma flows and all their power is drawn. As their only source of vitae, this evocative tissue is responsible for their ongoing existence, just as it is for their origins. Dilating in the presence of light and flame, they are heliovores. Consuming heat, they eat the sun without need of food or water or rest. Sustained by basking in the presence of fire, they burn plants rather than digest them, and hunt for warmth. Able to see heat as clearly as light, they are not blind to us, even in the dead of night. And to this vision, and Aesir is unmistakable. With armor of ice so cold, they stand out as voids, black against a snowy field. So tethered to the plains, the Fundamentum provides terrifying strength, and the capacity to live anywhere in the lands of plenty. But dominion over one's metabolism is rule of one's life, and the control of their development is control over their self. In this way, a dragon is incapable of betraying their mother, in thought or deed. Ultimately, it is this tissue and the intimate connection to the sun which separates a true dragon from all lesser humeiforms, such as kobolds, lizards, and hydra. Though similarly cold-blooded, such beings lack a fundamentum, and thus are doomed to be inferior and impermanent, reliant on an extrinsic font of blood. Our dialects have taken to calling all such beings dragonoid, but this word is borrowed from their tongue, with lesser than dragon being the direct translation. This means that countless adventurers who shout their disdain for dragonoids unwittingly insult themselves. Not knowing the creatures they vow to kill, view all things other as dragonoid, including their hunters. Thankfully, a dragon cannot create minions nor reproduce with impunity, limited by their capacity to summon blood and constrained by their hubris. As a dragon's power is tied to its humors, one must debase themselves to forge new life. For without sufficient volumes, a Kurr will harden to its core, and no life can emerge. Finding selflessness unbecoming and hesitant to show weakness before another, ego rarely allows them to copulate, but their pride goes deeper still. Suffusing every cell, it shapes them, ensuring that unlike the births of men, their gestation is not one of love, but of conflict. Fluid and unstructured, as soon as the inherited serum catalyzes the Kurr, perennial humors wage war. Their presence and proportion determine the initial conditions of the offspring, and ultimately the mixture it shall carry until death. But as the wants and wills of every color fight for control, the final amalgam can vary widely from when scales first form. This chaotic process has forged all but the first 12 dragons, with many a man correlating the dilution of their blood to the diminishing of their strength. While the quantity and potency of a parent's humors can hold heavy sway, there is no exact method to determine the creature's kin before emergence. Many speculate external conditions decide the victor, with imagined factors such as the Kurr's caretaker and surrounding environment, from temperature to humidity. However, only one verifiable constant has been assured: that colors absent at the Kurr's inception cannot arise within the dragon's veins. Ultimately, the considerations which govern this battle remain shrouded in complexity, but that which cements its end could not be more obvious. For sanguine forces poured and met before clotting contend to shape the wormling in their image, until the Fundamentem is made, and single color prevails. Produced by this elixir of life, the serum which forms the Fundamentem is identical to that which it creates, and with homeostasis held, no more do boundaries shift. Perpetuating a positive feedback loop, the Fundamentem begins to sprout organs, the first of which is unique to each race, decided by the predominant humor. Latching to the skeleton of brown dragons and the lungs of the blue, conjoined with the Fundamentem, they are infused with the most enriched blood, and every drop must first pass through it. This is the organ of power. Appearing first, it is the body's foundation, with all other systems built upon it. Every aspect of their morphology made to coordinate and conform to best accentuate this critical anatomic feature. Maturing rapidly and becoming far more pronounced than in the other species, in the eyes of academics, it is the organ of power, and not the scales, which classify a dragon's true color, though the two seldom differ. For it is the organ of power, not their appearance, which channels psionic potential. An example of this integration is the white dragon, whose organ of power is the heart. Beating with far greater ferocity, it pumps blood at the highest pressures of all kin. They possess exclusive glands and an entirely upended vasculature, allowing them to separate heat from cold via the injection of an endogenous antifreeze. Paired with additional arteries moving towards the skin and opening into specialized porous scales, these internal and external adaptations enable white dragons to freeze their blood, forming a layer of regenerating armor, possible only because their growth was centered around the heart. all 12 subspecies come with equally intricate and drastic transformations associated with their organ of power. And while all such eccentricities will be explored in the next chapter, we must first recognize the many things these subjects hold in common. The sun's will made material, dragons cannot persist under the meager rations of reality. Demanding magic to live, they would perish in an instant if cut from celestial power. Many have died seeking to exploit this reliance as fatal flaw. But manifest directly from a heavenly sphere, their blood moves to her thoughts alone. Raging against the laws of entropy and causality, no method nor spell has been found to meaningfully weaken dragon's blood, or prevent it from falling into place. The only way known to dispel or abjure a dragon's magic is by driving sword between the mother and her monsters, severing ties completely only as blood leaves the body. But as part of the sun, her blood wants, and has a mind its own. Wishing to burn the world barren, its highest calling is to be part of a true dragon. Fighting to remain in this form, their blood cauterizes spontaneously on contact with air, sealing their wounds whilst the humors beneath transmute into flesh. Always healing in proper order, their blood can regenerate any tissue save the Fundamentem itself, which can only arise when the serum of two dragons meet. Though turning blood into flesh weakens them, it allows recovery from almost any mutilation in hours or days. Thus, dragons demand a death by 1,000 cuts, as one cannot rely upon internal injuries and must force wounds to weep faster than scales can close. And as the volume of their humors diminish, their healing slows, and the forces which fuel them wane. But blood spilt must still be feared. As discussed, when two such pools combine, a new dragon forms. But stranger still happens if blood falls and finds no mate. Landing upon the ground, cold and alone, it instead bears a servant, needing to fight, to obey. The blood curdles to rise again as a kobold. Human in silhouette, yet unmistakably reptilian, they are perhaps 5 feet tall at the largest. Born with purpose, as perfect slaves. Made of one dragon, their humors are by the essence of their formation identical to their masters, determining what meager magical powers and anatomical changes they possess. From the moment of their creation, they hold knowledge inherent, their minds already shaped to speak and serve and defend their dragon till death. We are fortunate such creatures cannot overwhelm the land, as while the ability of the Draconis Fundamentum to channel vitae is remarkable, it is too finite. Without Fundamentum, they are doomed. Disconnected from fire, they cannot make blood. Sustained only by sunlight and their master's whim, to keep a kobold alive, dragons must feed them like leeches from their wrist. Still, a dragon hunt must be a delicate process. Draw out an engagement and they will leverage their regeneration, while reckless butchery will surround the party, for all a dragon need do to make a kobold is bleed. With lifetimes measured and unable to heal, there is a limit to their proliferation. Not even the blood of another dragon can save a kobold from their fate, for blood recognizes the cell. But what is made can be remade, and if immersed in their dragon's humors, they will be reborn, the entire body mended in seconds. But these restorative properties are reciprocal, with kobolds often acting as reservoirs to be torn asunder and replenish their injured makers. Such is their masochistic loyalty that they gladly sacrifice themselves to this purpose. For despite gruesome end, this is their highest honor, as it is the sole path to be reunited and once more be part of a true dragon. For no cur can come from dragon's blood which has first been a kobold, but it will try. Should a rival's humors touch their own, they shall rip through the kobold, melting them as they attempt to form a curror, reducing the creature once more to a stain upon the ground. Like ants surrounding a queen or dragons to the sun, they are unable to retreat or betray without certain death. Entirely dependent on their patriarch for life, they are drones, existing for symbiosis and joyously worshipping their deities, while through mere neglect, dragons choose only the most devout to survive. Their society values service alone, ranked at birth by the vitality and quantity of vitae spent on their crystallization. But the greatest of their kind come only as avengers, when all they have has crumbled and the death of their godhead has come. In any being, the final drops of death blood are the most potent. Dark and red, within minutes the mightiest kobolds spring from a dragon's corpse, to kill in the name of lords they will never come to know. But cut off from renewing blood, even these strongest will inevitably die, along with all kobolds which flowed from a dragon slain. While exsanguination remains the only practical means of weakening and killing a dragon, it must be recognized that their blood is dangerous, possessing strength its own even when unalive. Beyond its self-organizing nature and immunity to abjuration, the 12 humors, especially those of red, white, gray, and green, are deeply alchemical. These exceptional cases burn, freeze, dissolve, and poison at the slightest touch. But all dragon's blood is pyroclastic, and as all things of the sun and moon, react violently on contact with water and earth. Opposed to the land and sea, dragon's blood combusts spontaneously on contact with either. Derived from mutual celestial hate, water boils and soil is scorched in its presence. This interaction, held in common by every race, cannot be controlled by any individual. While exploding in water is of situational import, the touch of earth has far greater consequences. Power such as theirs is easily sensed, and as they walk, no footfall escapes the notice of the land. Marking their tracks with glowing illusions of smeared blood or smoldering flame, he betrays their path and reflects their color, leaving after images with each step upon dirt and stone. Thus, to move unnoticed, they are forced to fly under dark of night or covered by the blinding light of the sun. But even they must land, for as creatures so large, soaring can be a taxing affair. Forced to the air as they are, dragons have had structure designed and celestial gifts granted to make their flights possible. Each possessing 4 wings, the primary pair sit behind the shoulder, with posterior wings resting above the hips. In some kin, the hind wings are nearly vestigial, aiding only in balance and maneuverability. But with a surprising versatility, few, such as the yellow, black, and gray dragons, serve more specialized purposes. Most notably, the hind wings become capable of independent flight in the blue and brown humors. As wife to the sky, fire holds his blessing, and just as the sun is granted home among the clouds, so too are her dragons. Unwilling to sow chaos, yet not wishing to stoke his lover's ire, the sky has commanded his winds to oblige dragons, allowing them to fly even in the most turbulent conditions. However, offers no assistance in lifting them off the ground. But the daughter moon makes no such compromises. Early Methodists have opened their corpses searching for vulnerabilities since before the method was made. Though a universal map of their anatomy is impossible, great insights have been made in the rough architecture of their form. To supply their bodies and the absurd musculature responsible for flight, we find incredible variance in vascular density and diameter, with the most powerful individuals having a circulatory system an order of magnitude more complex than our own. Tissues riddled with capillaries smaller than those of rodents flow from the largest arteries known to man. While no exact measurements can be taken on volumes of blood summoned extradimensionally, we know that they operate at pressures many times our own. As when the incredibly hard walls of their veins are pierced, jets of crimson reach many feet from the laceration. But the strangest part of their circulatory system is in how they breathe. While the connection between breath and blood is not well understood, we can see its effects and its supremacy in dragons. Seeking the ruin of land, the moon has offered to help carry their load. Like a bird, their lungs reach into hollow bones, where vasculature pushes against the flow of air, pulling twice as much from every breath as we. And the bones they have been given are made of moonstone. Hard as bedrock, yet 1/6 the weight, this substance is lighter than water, and its pitted surface attaching excess muscle and connective tissue. Tendons, ligaments, and viscera fused to the skeleton exert forces which would splinter weaker bones, massively reducing their weight and withstanding their strength. Without Moonstone, a being of their size could never stay aloft. But greater physical might is not the end of what such gifts offer. For just as they draw more power from every breath, so too can they draw more energy from themselves. Passing so closely through them, as gases are exchanged, they saturate the air with their color, and as they exhale, they release a devastating onslaught of elemental fury associated with their humor. The flames and forces of their breath can consume dozens of men mid-flight, where physical attacks slaughter far fewer without the positional advantages. But all things have their bounds, and mercifully these creatures cannot use such powers with impunity. As a byproduct of their exertion, most can only perform such feats when their blood is pumping at full force. It is then one of the first of their powers to leave them as they bleed, and cannot be done continuously even when at full strength. The last benefit of Lua's gifts is the black glass of obsidian, for smelted in either the furnaces of man or the heat of a dragon's body, moonstone melts into the sharpest material in all the orrery. Making up their teeth and claws, brittle shards break to incredibly fine points, sharpening themselves with every slash, allowing them to easily rend flesh and tear through steel as the body continually regrows more. Recently, these have been added to the ever-expanding treasures of dragons slain. Teeth and claws too small and fragile to wield as weapons have become coveted by Methodists who practice the new science of surgery. So-called doctors seek these out not for swords but scalpels, and as tools of medicine. And now, with body covered, we move to the mind. Much like animals, they are not like us. Dragons housing a vastly different architecture and intellect from that of humans. Like all vermin, they are immune to the pull of sleep, but rather than having brains of sharpened iron, the reptilian cerebrum is made from a coiled snake. Resting within the skull, its tail descends, encased within the spine of the greater organism. During early gestation, their mind bears a striking semblance to the wrinkled mass within our heads, but its exterior quickly twists and stretches as it forms a protective layer of scales, shielding the thinking matter and maintaining shape under acute trauma. Submerged within the blood-brain barrier, this snake is both sheltered and nourished, as the pressurized fluid which feeds it also protects it from impact. Resilient as they are, a living specimen can be harvested even after the body dies. With incredible feats of precision, speed, and effort, the snake can be broken from the skull and spine, and submerged in fresh blood to prevent its second death. Still capable of lethal magics, the dangers, difficulty, and moral complications of such a procedure mean that I know of only one such success. Serving as equal parts prisoner and professor to the mortals who question it, They must always remember, while the mind functions, it is capable to kill. The only weakness of the dragon's mind is found in this rigidity, for they are as durable as they are inflexible. Able only to think within certain alignments, dragons can be predictable. Failing to grasp the most basic concepts of magic beyond their mother's bounds, they are prevented from reaching the adaptability of spellcraft possessed by mankind. But with thoughts ingrained in structure, their psionic talents are effortless and unsurpassed. So intimately connected to superior will, they are blessed with knowledge from first breath. Capable of literacy and speech in their tongue before they can walk, many possess the cunning of elders within a season of their birth. Where infants, both animal and man, must devote the mind to the development of the body, draconic humors possess innately all hormones which direct function. The reptilian brain, freed from such responsibilities, instead concerns itself solely with cogitation and the production of thought. Unburdened by the physical form, their alien minds and gifts for psionic philosophy were once reinforced over centuries of experience and acumen, their culture regarding mankind as we consider sheep. But this is not how we see them today. Now, less than 1 in 50 dragons know their own language, rendered into mere fauna. Their apocalypse predates our own. Long ago, before the advent of kings, they ruled the lands and waged the war on highest perch. An endless conflict between Aesir and dragon, this combat closed with an exchange of accursed gifts. To the Aesir, the dragons gave nectared wine, made from golem seeds to drink the Aesir's water and seal their immortality in immovable oak. But the Aesir granted gift in turn, a meat made from chimeric flesh, potent and ambrosial, meant to eat at their minds. Imparting an eternal hunger and consuming their sapience, this is how the savage came to outnumber the sane. These wild dragons are less than wormlings, and no better than beasts. Possessing the wisdom of a neonate, we call them wyverns. Only the weakest were not permitted to feast at this great summit, and it is for this reason that so many of the survivors are outcasts and runts, members of the lesser clades such as purple and green. After 800 years, not one has been cured. The blight resting in blood, it is passed down and passed on to any that taste their tainted humors. They once had a culture, a society, but with their fall and the rise of man, the dragons which remain are isolated. Fearful of contracting the withering, or at being the last of their kind, they hide, left to obsess over glory lost, while those which senselessly eat with their mouths battle over territory, and fill the lands with wyvern and lizards. Weaker than their lords, kobolds are even more vulnerable to the intertwining of chimeric meat and dragon's flesh. Dropping to their bellies or crawling on all fours, the kobolds of wyvern have become something new. Liberated, such humeiforms devour flesh as much as they bask in the sun, able to drink the blood of prey alongside the blood of their masters. These lizards are able to leave a dragon's side and fend for themselves as would any animal, and through this remarkable power have filled the earth and are now a daily sight. First dimented, then diluted. As rival wyverns clash, they unwittingly and undoubtedly produce more bestial offspring as their blood conjoins. Made perfect by the sun from single humors, the first dragons were Puritans, held above their children as paragons, finding flaw in any which differed from the tenets of their form. Their immense power shaped their caste system, with all others considered tainted, and deference shown to the purebloods which best resembled their progenitors. It is only because of the stringent practices demanded and enforced on parentage that the uneducated masses of today can still identify a dragon or wyvern based solely on the color of their scales. For shame was brought on any which sired off-color kin, those whose blood could not achieve supremacy within the Kurur, and whose wormlings did not share their organ of power. Thus, bleeding was strictly controlled, and many such offspring were killed through malice or neglect. But despite the great effort of Puritans, bloodlines have entwined, and subservient humors begun to display their marks. Minor differences once separated by kin have grown uncoupled from the placement of the Fundamentum. As the serum of their kind homogenizes, shapes evolve, and the specialization of mind and body become ever more complex. But it was not until the dragons were forsaken, becoming wild and proliferating without heed for humor, that the first Prismatics were formed. Rarest and most reviled by those which recognize the old ways, prismatic dragons arise when colors of blood are found in near equal measure, such that one can hardly be said to overpower another. While all possess but one organ of power, in such beings it is thinned by a myriad humors. They sport varied hues and multicolored patterns, with an equally mosaic combination of powers. Consensus defines them by their impurities, seeing only the weakness of incompatible traits. But I have seen past the horizon, and fear their second dawn. In the 800 years since their fall, lineages have become so adulterated that prismatics appear among the lucid. Each year less can be gleaned from a dragon's appearance, and the more we must account for the uncommon. Starting from diluted stock, off-colors languished as the dregs of their kind. So it was that they were denied ambrosia, and thus survived in the greatest numbers. This galvanized the lingering Puritans. Protecting themselves as the last bastions of perfection, they withdrew completely, and with them their pedigree. While upon the edge of extinction, even once powerful lineages have been forced to accept debased young. With so many slaughtered or driven mad, their race was nearing its end. But prismatics presumed feeble are finding terrifying success. As their Fundamentum attempts to impress harmony over warring humors, their biological and behavioral constraints soften, and they become unfit for their niche. Yet, however unlikely, some individuals combine traits to express abilities impossible for pureblood kin. A dragon holding black bile and red blood in consort might boil water, releasing it as scalding rain, or cause explosions by igniting the alchemic vapors produced by black bile. The emergence of these synergies and the versatility they present have created a new apex of their kind. Were dragons able to think as Methodists and apply logic to their gifts, I believe they could experience a renaissance to endanger mankind. For it takes an active mind and creative use for these prismatic monstrosities to find their true potential. But such is the intuitive ease with which dragons use their magics that even as beasts, prismatic wyverns can discover these techniques, though never reaching the heights of their sentient brothers. Worst would be if they learnt to apply reason to their reproduction. If they entertained the possibilities of this new creed, they could embark on a journey to remake themselves, and with intention, form a master race of dragons graced with all their best qualities. Blind to this future or resenting the generations unborn, they continue to shun these gifted few. But as more of these creatures are made, we will continue to see the deadly synthesis of their vitae. And while their culture may deny them, their nature shall push them down this path, continuously improving as the weak die off and those whose powers complement each other persist. As prismatics become ever more common and unpredictable, the limits of our classifications are strained. Those bespoke and perilous breeds, while crucial to understand, are too numerous to count, forcing academic standards to adapt. It is in this context and conversation that the next chapter of this journal is written, discussing the 12 races only in terms of pure-blooded specimens. Organized by organ of power, individuals will be accurately grouped without the complexities that secondary attributes present. Unfortunately, this means hunters must research each dragon as closely as they research these pages, discovering for every individual the features they display. But armed with this book, you will grasp the extent of their strengths, the limits of their defenses, and discern the subtle qualities which end the lives of the unprepared. For dragons are bound by the portraits painted in these texts and in the colors of their blood.